go.
Hi there, welcome back to Leeds Lobby. I think this is the 5th video that we've done today. Obviously we've got a lot of content to get through. It's been an eventful week. There doesn't seem to be so much going on with regards to transfers at the weekend, although there are hints and indications like Rafinha not being able to get on the plane in terms of what's happening. What we're going to be looking at in this video is we're going to be looking at the effect on certain players, like for example Luke Ayling, who might not get his first team pick, what that means for him in terms of the future, and how we think the season will go. Before we get into the content,
please subscribe and like the videos because it really helps.
Yeah, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, hitting that bell for the notifications. So what we're going to do with this video is we're going to look at each position and we're going to look at what our cover is, where we think we may have strengths and weaknesses. And we're also going to talk about some of the good things and the bad things about having a small team, like a small squad like Bielsa kept, and a larger team, bearing in mind we've added 6 or 7 players to our first team roster by the look of it in many cases. So let's begin by looking at the goalkeeper berth. And we have 2 keepers at we've got 3 keepers at the club. Do we really think that we're going to see Kiko Casilla in a Leeds kit again?
Got quite a few, but I think Kiko Casilla needs to go, if I'm being honest. I think he doesn't have a great effect on the dressing room with some of the stuff that he's put out online. I don't think that he's up to Premier League standard, and I don't think that he should be playing next season.
Can you see Ilhan Meslier staying at the club long term?
I can see Meslier staying at the club, yeah. Meslier will stay.
Do you think he is one player that, being the age he is and the size he is and how competent he has been for his age, I think he's somebody that the big clubs might come calling. I'd certainly like to see him at Leeds for a good long time. Thing with goalkeepers is goalkeepers, it seems, don't mind sitting on the bench in many cases. There is a first and second team goalkeeper, and there is at most clubs, but it's very rare that a goalkeeper is replaced or displaced, and there's not so many clubs where there's competition, where there's 2 competent keepers at the top that are both likely to start on a weekday, on a game day.
Yeah.
Next we're going to look at what is typically historically a number 2, which is our right back or right wing back. What are your thoughts on that position, Dan?
Christensen starts week in, week out for me, unless he's injured or is out of form. I think it goes Christensen, then Drame second choice, and then Ayling third choice.
That's quite bold. I mean, obviously we've not even seen Christensen in a Leeds shirt yet. He looks to me like a big lad, and somebody that, if he is as athletic as he looks, I mean, almost like we're talking like a Bastian Schweinsteiger sort of figure on that right hand side. Adolf Lundgren, somebody's talked about him. I think I've put down Arnie because he's a big lad, and if he comes off for Leeds, he could be a fan favourite. He definitely fits the Leeds mould. But what I'm interested in knowing is Luke Ayling. Is he going to be happy sitting on the bench?
I think that he'd be more than happy. Obviously, he wouldn't be more than happy, but he would be. I think he would be quite content with it. He's getting to that age now. I think he's 31 soon. He's captained the club basically all season, and I think he would be fine with just coming on and just being an influence from the bench.
What about Drame?
Drame, we cannot let him go. We cannot let him go to Cardiff on a permanent. We can't let him be picked up by one of these tractors, these shovels of big teams that just scoop up young players and waste their careers. I think that we need to keep him and start giving him some good minutes. Okay,
so the next thing, we've got these 2 centre-half positions that are going to be in the Leeds United team, and we have obviously Cork and Llorente, we've got Cooper, we've got Helder who can play in that position, we've got Strike. We've got essentially 5 players for 2 spots there. What's the solution to that?
Well, we've loaned out Cresswell already. We've sold Noah Kenner. I think Helder would be a good squad rotation player. Seems we've got 5 subs. Cooper would. I obviously did the video talking about saying how I would have him starting, but that is purely on the basis of the fact we finished 9th with Cooper and Llorente. I think that our main partnership probably should be 2 of our younger players. Maybe not Strauch and Helder, because the bit of the inexperience there. I think the same thing about Strauch and Koch. I don't think they should be starting together in the same partnership, because I think it's 2 relatively young players that don't have a experienced head next to them. Llorente's 29. I think that he's a good option to start, as long as he's got a leader next to him like Robin Koch.
Interesting question. Do you think Cooper will be captain next year?
I don't think he will. I think Tyler Adams will be captain. Marsh has taken Tyler Adams to pretty much every club he's been to. and he's always been captain. So I think that Tyler Adams will be our captain next year. Maybe not from the start, but maybe we might start to see the transition after January.
I think that's the key word, is transition. I think it's likely, me personally, I think it's likely that he may well start as captain, but I think that as the season comes on, if he gets injured and he's out for any length of time, it may well be difficult for him to force himself back into the team. I don't think necessarily he's going to be a given that he will force his way back in the team on account of form. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. One thing I would say to you is there's some players there that will be expecting some first team game time, and this is where something that Marsh has in previous clubs been known for is going to be really, really important. You see, keeping a small squad for a team like Leeds United is one thing, and the strength, of course, is that squad tends to bond and there's be a lot of happiness within the squad, and there tends to be a bonding that takes place, and the players tend to play for each other. The problem you've got, of course, with the small squad is if you end up with a situation whereby players get injured, there's not the depth to be able to bring the right sort of experience into the squad to be able to cover. Then if you go the other way and you've got a big squad, you've got players that are itching for pitch time, players like Drami that have asked to go on loan, they're obviously back in the club and back on the bench, which isn't ideal. But it's a strength, because if you have injuries, that's fine. This is where I think the cup run is really, really important. Leeds haven't had a cup run, a really good cup run in a number of different cups for quite some time. You were talking to me about Marsh earlier on, Dan. What is it you were saying?
He's won the Austrian Cup a couple of times, and I think he did win the German Cup before he was sacked by Leipzig. So I do think he's a manager that loves the cup run. He obviously loves to introduce young players and get young players playing. So I think that we will have a decent cup run. I think with the signings we've made, we should be at least making it to the quarter semis, as we did in the Carabao Cup last year.
And I think that's really important if we're going to keep a good strength in depth with decent quality, experienced players who are at the club and happy to continue playing at the club. We're going to need to be having good cup runs. Next, we're going to talk about the left back position. What do you see happening here, Dan?
I can't see Harrison becoming a left back if Rafinha goes, honestly. We're going to need two inverted wingers, and I think Harrison will play on the right as an inverted winger when or if Rafinha goes. So I do think it will be Firpo and Hjelde and Leif Davis as well. Marsh has said that Leif Davis is the solution to the depth at left back, the problem we seem to have with depth at left back. Marsh did do an interview after the most recent game at Blackpool saying that he's the solution. So I think it will be Hjelde, Leif Davis and Firpo fighting out at left back.
Again, interesting. I do think that, bearing in mind Firpo is injured, he's not made his way to Australia on account of that injury. Neither has Rafinha, which tells me that there's a good chance that he's now going to be going. That being the case, Harrison will be used as an inverted winger on that right hand side, undoubtedly. Bearing in mind Sinistera is an inverted winger on the left hand side. So again, if that is the case, that does leave us a little bit short in the left back position. Maybe, just maybe, we may end up going in for a left back after all. Be interested to see how that one pans out. What about the holding midfield roles? Obviously, we've just signed two players in Mark Rocker and Tyler Adams. Do you see anybody else breaking into that too in the short term, or do you think that mainly it's just going to be those two?
I think the main sort of two contenders will definitely be Tyler Adams and Mark Rocker, and I think they will start for the Wolves game. They will be the week in, week out starters. But the two midfielders that will be pushing through this year are Lewis Bate and Archie Gray. And Marsh did say that he considers Archie Gray a first team squad player, so he will be coming to the games and sitting on the bench, and he will be coming on as a substitute, and I think he will make his debut this season. And
I do see those two players as breakthrough players this year, players that I expect to get an awful lot more pitch time than they've had in recent years. Archie Gray really was absolutely stunning at Blackpool. And I do see Bate, when he has come on and he's played, as being somebody that's been able to make an impact. So for me, there are two first team choices there, which are the new signings. I'd be very disappointed if we saw Adam Forshaw. There's something gone catastrophically wrong if we started the first match with Adam Forshaw playing in a holding midfield role. Yeah. Really looking forward to seeing what these two guys can bring in the coming season. What about that inverted or even not inverted right wing role, right midfield? Right winger, what do you see happening there?
Jack Harrison. I think if Rafinha does go, which it is looking more than likely now, then I think Jack Harrison will play as an inverted winger, and he has got the finishing attribute to his game. But then again, you do look at Salzburg even, and they excused Mo Kamara from their pre-season games, and they excused him from their training. But there's still been no movement there. He's still not moved to Brighton or Leeds, so we could still see Rafinha still pushing for that move to Barca, waiting for them to be able to afford him. And if they can't afford him in this window, then it's a tough one. It might be that he stays and goes in January.
And this is where I see Harrison in that left back situation, in this left wing back mode, and that's because we have Aronson, who we've just signed. There's no way we've signed him for 25 million. He's an American poster boy. He's somebody that Jesse Marsh has specifically gone after as the first and most important signing that he's made. And then we've also got Somerville, who can play in that role, and also on top of that we've also got Dan James. So somewhere down the line we've got 4 players who can play in that position, one of which we just signed, one of which was one of our most really standout players last season and the season before, which is Jack Harrison. There's no way that Jack Harrison and Aronson and James are all going to be competing for that position, and we're not signing a left back. There has to be guys, there has to be something with Dan James or Harrison fitting into that left back role. There just has to be, if we're not going to sign a left back. So for me, I see Somerville as a backup there for Aronson, and I see Aronson playing out and playing in from the right hand side.
Yeah. Where does Dan James fit into that, do you think?
Dan James is a backup for Aronson. He's a backup for that left wing berth. He can play on the left wing, so he can be a backup for Sinisterra. He can also play attacking midfield, so he will get pitch time.
Yeah.
He's another player that will probably do better if we have a long cup run. But looking at that left hand side, I think the name that's on everybody's lips has got to be Sinisterra.
Yeah. What do you make of the front two or the front one?
Front two, I mean, obviously we have Bamford, we have Joffrey, we have also Greenwood, who can, if we end up playing a 4-2-3-1, Greenwood can play up front, of course, but obviously he can also play as an attacking midfielder. We've got Rodrigo, who can play up front or as an attacking midfielder. We've got Joffrey, who can play as a number 9, but also can drop deep to pick the ball up. But one thing is for certain, I think that we've got Bamford fit at this moment in time. It seems we still need that spearhead of the attack, that number 9, that old-fashioned centre forward, Lee Chapman. I hate to say Brian Dean. He spent most of his time at Sheffield United, but I'd love to see that Mark Viduka type player brought in. Not Lee Chapman-esque, but I mean, I'm talking about somebody that of Mark Viduka's standard. I think personally Joffrey is somebody that is more akin to a Robbie Keane, but I'd love to see somebody to go alongside that, because I'm not even sure Bamford's going to stay fit all season. Yeah. He might be out for another 6 months.
Yeah.
All he's got to do is stub his toe out door on way to go get a sandwich in the morning, and you ain't going to see him for another year. Let's be right about it. The guy's injury prone.
I think that my front two personally, are we talking about new signings, players that we could potentially bring in, or are we just talking about what we've got currently?
I think what we've got currently.
Currently, for me, it would be the front two's Bamford and Joffrey, and then you've got Rodrigo and Greenwood as depth. I personally think that you've got a striker and a striker. I think one should drop back and play just behind, but obviously then they can pop up as a false 9 if needed. But I also think that if we need to push hard for the signing of De Ketelaere, which it looks like we're still going for De Ketelaere, and we're offering in excess of £35 million or euros for him, which is mental. But if we don't get him, then I'm a big fan of Callum Wendo, and I think that he would be a good player for us.
I think that De Ketelaere is a bit of a smokescreen, personally. I mean, we were all thinking about Gakpo, and then it turns out we've been tracking Sinisterra for years, and it was just very much under the radar. I've got a feeling it's going to be that way with the striker, but what is certain this season, the problems we had with strength in depth, and if you're going to have a decent Premiership campaign, unfortunately you've got to have strength in depth. That's one thing that Leeds came up from the Championship without. We didn't have that strength in depth. Now we seem to have a strength in depth, and we also seem to have quality in all of these different positions, and in many cases both in terms of the first team and also the backup. What do you guys think? Do you disagree with our appraisal as to who would start and who wouldn't? Would you perhaps see some of our second choices as first choices? Do you disagree with our lineup? Please, by all means, comment in the box below. If you haven't subscribed and you keep coming back to the channel, please hit that subscribe button, hit the notification button, and also interact with us in the chat.
Yeah. See you next time. Goodbye. The Leeds Lobby FPL will be linked in the description, so don't forget to put that in, Dad. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Please join the FPL though.